So I scoured my channel. It is possible that I missed it, but I don't think I've ever done a video talking about my favorite books ever. I had a very fleeting thought to do a similar video to last Monday's video, which I'll link up here, where I talked about my favorite horror movies from every single year I've been alive. I could easily pick like 30 books that I love, but I thought it was more of a challenge to narrow it down to the top 10, because that meant I really had to really had to think about which ones were my favorites. Plus, last Monday's video took a very long time to edit, and I don't want to do that again for a little while. So this is a ranked list. So we're going to go from number 10 to number 1, starting obviously with number 10, which is Vampire Kisses. I'm including the whole series. I just didn't want to pull them all out of the shelf because there's like 10 of them. This series and one other series that I'll talk about a little bit later in the list were like defining book series for my early teen years, you know, like 12, 13, 14, and I still love them. They have such a special place in my heart. I love that they took like your typical vampire rules. Can't see the reflection, definitely can't go out in the sun, can't be around garlic. Instead of updating it, which I'm all for different takes on vampirism, but it was cool to see, you know, like the classic vampire tropes applied to, at the time, modern day. These are a little bit dated now, but I also thought the main character, Raven, is quite realistic. Not only in her reaction to finding out that Alexander is a vampire, also love seeing a goth chick as a main character who's, you know, like just has her friendships based on who she's friends with. Like her friend is the complete and total opposite from her style-wise and personality-wise, and I love that. It resonated with me very much, and I just loved the vibes of this. Love them. I love this series so much. Number 9 is an older book, but a recent read for me, and that is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. But this was just like right place, right time read, you know what I mean? Those type of books don't just like slowly make their way into your heart, they just like shove their way in and they're like, yeah, I'm staying here forever. And that's what this book did. It was just, I read it at the exact right time that I needed to read this. It hit me so hard, especially the end. I read this for a video I did where I tried to read like 10 books in 3 days or something like that. I'll link it up here. You can witness me. I edited it out, but you can tell I started to cry talking about this book. It hit me real hard, and I love this book so much now. Speaking of books that made me cry, number 8 is one that is older, and I did read it quite a bit of a long time ago, and that is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. Hopefully that's how you say his name. I've never actually looked up how you say his last name. I'm pretty sure I was still in high school when I read this. It wasn't a signed reading. I just wanted to read it because I wanted to read it. And it was definitely revolutionary for me at the time because I had never read anything quite like this, where we had chapters that were from the point of view of death. Of course, it's a bit of a tough read because it takes place during World War II in Germany, a German family, which is also like a perspective that I hadn't quite read from before in all of the historical fiction I read in middle school taking place around World War II. That was like a weird phase that I went through, and the ending had me sobbing. If you wanted any proof that like all cancer signs are pretty much the same, my mom witnessed this, like me just like hard crying at the end of this, and of course wanted to read it too, so she read it right after me. There's like 2 very strong themes in this list that I'm just now realizing. It's either heavy nostalgia or books that devastated me, or a combination of both. Number 7 on my list is The Changeling by Victor LaValle. This definitely falls into the devastating category. It does have, without spoiling anything or giving you specifics, it's not like a terrible ending, you know, like it's not just like completely bleak and tragic throughout, but a lot of heavy shit happens in this, and it is so, like, devastating is just like the best word I can think of, which is a weird way to describe a book that I really, really like. I use it all the time at work because I recommend this to everybody. This is like one of my main go-tos when somebody comes and asks me for horror recommendations, because I feel like not that many people still have read this, which I could be wrong. Like, Changeling mythology is so creepy in and of itself. It's just a haunting story about fatherhood, racism, anxiety, just like every time I thought I had it figured out what was going on, another layer was peeled back, and I was just like the driving force in this book. As soon as I got comfortable, something else happened where it's like, oh, well, I gotta keep reading and find out what happens now. All right, this is the second entry that is technically the whole series that I'm putting in here. This one has like 14 books, so I'm definitely not pulling all of those out of my shelf, and that is the Sweep series by Cate Tiernan. Actually, both for Vampire Kisses and Sweep, the books are not that long, so when I say there's 14 books of this, all of them except for the last one are this thick, so they're not hard to get through, which is why I just absolutely devoured these when I was a preteen. Still love to this day the representation of pagan religion. In this book, it's specifically Wicca, but at its roots, it is so realistic. There are elements of supernaturalness going on in here, but the foundation is so realistic, which I really, really love. This was definitely a foundation for me personally for my own journey in pagan religions. A lot of like heavy topics that, like, as I was reading it as like a 13-year-old, I don't want to say didn't register with me, but it, like, I hadn't really experienced a lot of this stuff at the time. But then, like, looking back on it and like rereading of it, I'm like, wow, probably should give some warnings for like religious trauma and abusive relationships in this, but it's amazing. Amazing. Number 5 on my list is also a recent read, and I know I've talked about this many times now in videos and in live streams, but the chokehold this book has me in is incredible. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I never thought in a million fucking years I would like a sci-fi book. I was traumatized early on trying to read Dune, and I was like, I'm never touching any of these books ever again. And this was one of the first books I picked up in that area, and oh my god. I've said this a couple times, it's definitely cozy sci-fi. Like, there's not super duper high stakes in this. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like low sci-fi or anything like that. There's some concepts in here that are pretty advanced. I felt that they were presented in a way that's really easy to understand, and I didn't feel like I was just utterly confused by those concepts. And then of course there's like the other side to the coin where there's like this found family theme that I so much enjoyed. It was so cozy and so nice, and it was like you instantly love every single character. And it took me a little bit to read the second book in the series because it doesn't follow the exact same crew, but it has the same cozy vibe, so I'm positive the rest of the series is also going to. Becky Chambers. The ability to make these characters that I just so desperately want to know in real life. It's an art form. It's an art form. Number 4 on my list is also a book that I never thought I would like in a million years. Just goes to show you shouldn't judge yourself by your own cover. I don't know where I'm going with this. It's Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. So I'll go ahead and include the whole series in this one also. The next one comes out in November, and of course I'm going to be reading it, but I was encouraged to read this by my ASM at work, and oh my god. Again, never in a million years thought I would like a high fantasy book, but it wasn't overwhelming in like the world building and the explanation of the magic system. I feel like it's a very unique magic system in this very unique world, but it was presented in a way that didn't make me feel like I was getting too much information all at one time, or helped in reading the entire series. Like I felt like I had a good grasp on it, and you know, I didn't need like refreshers or anything like that to, or like had to take notes to make sure I was understanding everything. Highly recommend this one. I did not think I was gonna like it, but you know, here I am. Okay, we're moving into the top 3 here. Number 3 is another nostalgia pick, and I think I've talked about this a few times on my channel. That is The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. This was definitely one that I found when I was like at this point I was like out of my series phase. Was reading a lot of like dystopian teen like fantasy adventure books at the time, and was just kind of getting burnt out on them. So I was specifically looking for standalone novels, and I came across this one, and oh my god. Still has a bit of like a fantasy supernatural element to it, but it's a lot more like horror side than anything, based on folklore, which I also loved. Just to give you a quick description, demon water horses. I mean, I'd never read anything with demon water horses before. It sounded awesome, and it was. But I love this so much that I like specifically, there was like an exclusive owl crate with this exclusive cover. So this is not the only copy I own. I have my original copy on the shelf. Is one of, I think, only 2 books that I loved so much that I bought a second edition of, and I have more than one edition sitting on my shelf. It's a teen book technically, but the horror elements are really surprising. It's not a full-on horror. I keep saying the word horror. I don't think it falls into that genre. I don't think anybody classifies this as a horror book, but man-eating water horses are pretty fucking scary to me. So all right, number 2, I told y'all when I talked about this book, when I reviewed this book, that it made it into my top 3 of all time for sure. I loved it so much, and can't really talk about it, but I'm making y'all read it for Creepy Book Club, so we will be talking about it. That is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. Because it all has to do with like the reveal at the end. That was just like so amazing. It was just set up so well. It definitely makes you like check your own biases that have been put in place by so many horror novels, so many horror movies, where you just assume the story is going a certain way, and the portrayal of what is actually going on is just so good. I can't say it because it'll ruin the book, but I'm making y'all read this for Creepy Book Club. It's the December pick. We'll end out the year hopefully with a book that everybody loves. I'm gonna be really upset if we all read it for Creepy Book Club and you guys all hate it. You're entitled to your opinions, except on this book. You have to love it. And finally, my number 1 favorite book I have ever read so far in my 30 years is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Wow. Be the first horror book I ever read, like of my own volition and not for school or anything like that. I don't think I've ever like had any moments where I've felt any form of agoraphobia. Like this is probably the closest feeling I could ever get to like agoraphobia and like claustrophobia at the same time. Like everything is so closed off. It made me feel like I like couldn't get enough room, but also it was like more comforting. Like I was just imagining myself in this house. It'd be more comforting to be in a smaller room where I could like see all the sides and like make sure nothing was creeping up behind me. Really scary in some of the most subtle ways. Didn't realize like how scary a scene was at the time, and then I would like go to bed, or like I'd get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or something, or I'd be doing something, and like all of a sudden a scene from that book would come back, and I would just be like, all I could think about was that and how scary it was. Really effective. It's a lot more subtle than other horror books, so I know some people like this isn't their vibe, and that's fine. Love, absolutely love. So those are my top 10 favorite books I've ever read. Please share what yours are in the comment section down below. I made a reading challenge for the last half of the year for Creepy Book Club on Storygraph. That is what I use now. I don't use Goodreads for so many reasons. I'm not sponsored or anything, but I just like the Storygraph so much better. It's still newer and they're still making updates constantly, and there's no book club feature yet. I hope that's something that's upcoming. So I technically made a like reading challenge. I'll link it in the description. It has the list of everything we're reading for Creepy Book Club for the rest of the year. So at least you can like see them ahead of time and have a place. Maybe you can like save the challenge or however you want to do it so that you have a place you can keep going to, so you don't have to keep like scrolling back on my Instagram or something to find that picture I posted. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new here, become a Creepy Peep today. I will see you very soon with a new video. Until then, stay strange. Bye.